All right, let's get right into it. When we think about the future, it's easy to picture either a total utopia or, Mad Max. But what does the evidence actually say our world will look like in 2100? This isn't some story about the apocalypse. It's a guided tour of our most probable future, one that's being built by the choices we're making right now.
So to make this real, let's just try a little thought experiment. Just imagine for a second. It's the year 2100. What does a totally normal day actually look like? Okay, so picture your granddaughter. She's starting her day in a city of, say, 20 million people. And the very first thing she does before she even checks her messages is open an app to check the heat index. And this isn't about planning a fun day at the beach. It's just a daily safety check. It's as normal to her as checking the traffic is to us.
A little later, she decides to go visit a friend. Her ride is a train that runs along this massive seawall that's part park, part coastal defense. To her, it's not some incredible marvel of engineering. It's just the scenery. It's just how her city looks.
And here is the absolute key to her entire world. She complains about the humidity, just like we do. But her normal, the everyday climate she grew up with, is about 3 degrees Celsius warmer than the world you know today. So how on earth did we get there? And what does a 3-degree world actually feel like?
Now, that little story I just told you, that's not science fiction. It's a future that's based on some pretty hard data. So let's get into it. Section 1, the new climate normal. How exactly do we end up in this 3-degree world? This chart basically lays out the different paths we could take. Right now, today, we're at about 1.1 degrees of warming. Now, if we were to pull off some truly heroic efforts at mitigation, we could land around 2 degrees. But see that third bar? That's our current path. That's the trajectory we're on as of right now. So let's just focus on that number for a second, 3 degrees Celsius. Multiple scientific bodies, including the UN's own IPCC, all point to this being our most likely destination by the year 2100 if we just keep doing what we're doing. It's not the best case, it's not the worst case. It is, for all intents and purposes, the most probable case. Of course, a warmer world means higher seas, that's a given. But what exactly is sea level rise? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's the permanent increase in the ocean's average height, and it's driven by 2 main things: ice from glaciers and ice sheets melting into the ocean, and a simple law of physics. As water gets warmer, it expands. And this is where you can really see the stakes. In that 2-degree world, the one with strong climate action, we'd probably see about half a meter of sea level rise. But in the 3-degree world we're headed for, we're looking at nearly a full meter. Now that difference might not sound like a lot, but for hundreds of coastal cities, it's the difference between flooding you can manage and a constant rolling state of emergency. Okay, so a warmer planet, higher oceans, what does that actually feel like on a human level, day to day? Let's dive into that. Section 2, life in a hotter world. First things first, where is everybody going to live? Well, overwhelmingly in cities. Projections show that by 2100, a pretty staggering 85% of humanity will be urban. Just think about that. That's almost 9 billion people all packed into these dense, built-up areas, all experiencing these changes together. But, and this is a huge but, life in these future cities will be a tale of 2 cities. For the wealthy, there'll be these marvels of adaptation, right? Think white roofs everywhere to reflect heat, green, cool corridors for walking, mandatory cooling centers. But for the poor, who often live in informal settlements, the reality will be totally different. Just direct, raw exposure to the worst of the heat and the biggest flood risks. This new climate also completely rewrites the rules for the economy. We can expect slower long-term growth, mainly because so much more money is just going to be spent on rebuilding and adapting. Even the basic rhythm of work will have to change. Any outdoor jobs, construction, farming, a lot of that will have to shift to the night or the very early morning to avoid the deadly daytime heat. And across the board, heat stress is just going to hammer productivity. All right, so let's zoom out from the city to the whole globe, because this isn't just a story about inequality inside our cities. It's a story of an entire planet that's been divided by this new climate. Welcome to Section 3, a world divided. You see, climate change creates geographic winners and losers. It really does. Some high-latitude places like Canada and Northern Europe could actually see some benefits, longer growing seasons maybe, and new Arctic shipping routes opening up. But for low-lying regions like Bangladesh, the Mekong Delta, and entire small island nations, the future looks completely different. For them, it's just extreme, unrelenting stress from rising seas, brutal heat, and water shortages.
And this, right here, might be the most critical takeaway in all of this. The fact that we survive does not mean we will be equal. A future where humanity adapts and keeps going is completely, totally compatible with a future of just brutal inequality, where the heaviest price is paid by the people who did the least to cause the problem and are least able to cope. So, after all that, you might be wondering, is this future just inevitable? Is it set in stone? Well, no, not entirely. And that brings us to our final section, the fork in the road. Because the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we choose. So here's the choice, laid out plain and simple. On one path, you've got the 2-degree world that we could still shoot for. That means less extreme heat, migration that's more manageable, and faster economic growth because we're not constantly paying for disasters. On the other path, you've got the 3-degree world we're currently heading for. That's a world where extreme heat is a daily threat, relocation costs just explode, and growth slows to a crawl. So here's the bottom line. We are very likely going to avoid a Hollywood-style apocalypse. Even at 3 degrees, the world is still human. We adapt, we innovate, we find ways to survive. The real debate isn't about survival versus extinction. It's about the cost in money, the cost in global stability, and the cost in human lives turned upside down. And that leaves all of us with the final and really the most important question. This whole thing isn't just about environmental policy. It's about long-term risk management. It's about what kind of stability and opportunity we want to leave for the generations who are actually going to live in that world. So the question we have to ask ourselves is not, can we afford to act, but which of these futures can we truly afford to build?